Far beneath the bright surface of the sea lived a little mermaid in a quiet cove of soft sand and coral. Each morning, sunlight reached down in gentle beams, and the water warmed like a hug. She kept a small shell comb made from a gift of the reef, smooth and pearly with tiny ridges that felt like ripples. She loved how it glided through her hair as the current hummed around her. One early day, when the tide turned and the water moved like a slow song, she swam to a garden of seagrass. Silver bubbles stitched the blades together, and tiny fish drifted through as if they were visiting friends. She rested there for a while, happy and calm, then swam on, not noticing that the comb had slipped from the notch in her coral nook and drifted away with the tide. By midday, the light had softened. She returned to her cove and reached for the comb. Only smooth sand waited in its place. The little mermaid looked left and right, searched under a gentle fringe of algae, and brushed along the edges of her shell bed. The comb was gone. At first her heart fluttered like a small fish caught by surprise, then quieted as she breathed with the waves. She remembered how the ocean always gave clues to those who looked kindly. She moved back through the seagrass garden and watched for small signs. A strand of her hair, pale and glimmering, floated near a rock shaped like a sleeping seal. The tide had pushed it there. She followed the flow, letting the water guide her step by step. Past the seagrass lay a field of smooth pebbles, each one round from years of rolling. The pebbles clicked softly as the current passed over them, a gentle sound like distant rain. In the middle of the field, a tiny crab paused and watched her with patient eyes. The little mermaid slowed so the pebbles would not scatter and read the shapes the current wrote across the sand. The lines pointed toward a ridge of coral. She swam along the ridge, noticing how soft algae had grown in small curls and how tiny snails left shining trails. The water cooled a little here, and the shadows deepened into a blue that felt peaceful rather than dark. A slip of pearl color flashed at the edge of her vision, but it was only a shell, smooth and empty, carrying a story of its own. At the end of the ridge, the seafloor fell into a shallow valley where tall golden kelp reached upward. The fronds swayed in slow patterns like hands dancing. She parted the leaves with care, never forcing a path, and let them brush her shoulders like friendly curtains. The comb was not in the first grove, nor in the second. The tide pulled gently toward the far edge, and she followed. The valley opened to a place where sunlight poured in wide paths from above. There, the water glowed like morning. A small school of fish spun together, then drifted apart in a pattern that looked like a flower opening and closing. The little mermaid paused to watch. Her heart felt lighter, and she remembered that beauty was everywhere, even when something was missing. Beyond the glow, a narrow channel curved like a smile through rocks. Inside, the current slowed to a hush. She noticed a tangle of seaweed caught on a stone. Within it, a smooth glimmer rested, not pearl, not shell, but something gentle and known. With careful fingers, she eased the seaweed aside. The little shell comb slipped free and drifted into her hands like a leaf returning to its branch. She held it, feeling relief spread through her chest like warm light. She did not rush to comb her hair. Instead, she looked around at the channel that had kept her comb safe. A tiny starfish clung to the rock wall, and a pair of shy shrimp explored the tangle of seaweed as if it were a castle. She smiled with her whole body, grateful for the sea's quiet keeping. On the way home, she passed the pebble field again. The pebbles sounded soft now, familiar, like footsteps on a path. She understood that the comb had always been a small part of something larger. The sea had taught her with calm patience. The things she held were lovely, but they did not make her lovely. The kindness she used to search, the care she gave the plants and creatures as she passed, the way she listened to the water, those were the treasures that stayed. Back in her cove, she tucked the comb into a safer nook lined with velvety algae. She combed her hair slowly, not to shine more brightly than the reef, but to feel the simple rhythm of motion and breath. The water around her seemed to hum a lullaby that matched her heartbeat. Beauty settled not on the surface, but beneath it, quiet and sure. As evening drifted down, the surface above turned the color of tea with honey. She thought of the seagrass garden, the patient crab, the pebble rain, the kelp hands, and the gentle channel that guarded a lost thing. The day had become a circle, and in the center she found herself small, steady, and full of soft courage. From then on, she noticed other small lost things: a feather of seaweed without its branch, a shell turned on its side, a strand of floating moss sand. She set them gently where they could belong again. Each time, the water seemed to glow just a little warmer. She learned that beauty grows in places where care is given, and that the sea returns what is loved with a kind of quiet wisdom. When night finally settled and stars looked down like bright seeds, the little mermaid rested in her cove. The comb lay nearby, but it was no longer the center of her heart. What mattered most was the way the ocean had carried her, the way she had listened, and the way she had returned with more tenderness than she had set out with. She closed her eyes and drifted into sleep, as calm as a shell in safe sand, held by the great blue cradle that knew her by the shape of her gentle choices.